Welcome back to another episode of WJ Live, powered by the Western Journal. I'm George Upper, editor-in-chief of the Western Journal, and I'm joined today by Deputy Managing Editor Brian Chai and Crackerjack reporter, this guy, AJ Shasha, who will probably call himself by some other name at some point during this podcast. You should not listen to that.
I hope I don't call myself by name. That's kind of weird.
Is AJ Shasha. We have a great show for you today. We've got a number of important topics to discuss, and we hope to hear from you in the comments on youtube.com/WJ Live. If you're listening to us somewhere else or watching us somewhere else, we encourage you to go there, subscribe to our YouTube channel, click that bell next to it so you get a notification every time a new episode is posted to WJ Live's YouTube channel. Today we're going to be talking about this random football game that apparently is scheduled for this weekend. You probably haven't heard anything about it, but we will discuss the Super Bowl, the ratings, the cultural impact of the Super Bowl. We also, I don't know if you're aware of this or not, but the brand new Secretary of Defense has issued a stand-down order for the entire U.S. military. We'll talk about why that is and whether you think that's a good idea. But starting out, it turns out that there are thousands of people, registered Republicans, who are no longer self-identifying as Republicans. They have changed parties or registered elsewhere. AJ has that story. AJ.
Yeah, so over the last couple of weeks, I've been seeing quite a few reports in light of the incursion on the U.S. Capitol in Washington on January 6th, and quite a few of those reports were thousands of Republican voters leave the rolls in certain key swing states, even some kind of more Democratic states where they were just seeing thousands of folks changing their voter registration and leaving the Republican Party, and it was not being paralleled by the Democratic Party. They were not losing the same number of voters. And so I kind of wanted to dig into that. So we started reaching out to different state secretary of states. We reached out to the Republican Party in a number of these states, and we reached out to some election experts and just kind of compiled some of those numbers and some of those conversations that got had. And interestingly enough, it would seem that, the Hill, their reporting was pretty close to spot on. They aggregated the NPR reports, a Daily Caller report, and some other reports, and they found that after the riot, voter registration hits came to the tune of about 30,000 disassociated voters across Arizona, Colorado, Florida, Maryland, North Carolina, and Pennsylvania collectively. That doesn't sound like a whole lot, but when we're talking in the tens of thousands, that's it's a substantial number. It's not meaningless.
And we certainly know some states in 2020 were decided by very narrow margins.
Yep. Absolutely. And so when we finally got to dig down into some of those numbers, the numbers that we got to dig into, Florida, Pennsylvania, and Arizona, we actually found that a couple were a little bit less, a couple were a little bit more. My analysis, Pennsylvania, losses as high as 41,000 folks left the party in Pennsylvania. We had 3,500 of those Republicans actually transferred to the Democratic Party. A bunch of them went unaffiliated or went to smaller parties that were listed as other. Here in Arizona, we saw that there were about 5,000 who left between January 6th and January 15th, and another 3,000 that left the following week. So definitely looking at above 30,000 in probably the 50,000 number on last month. The problem with this is that we were also hearing from a lot of these state secretary of states and their spokespeople that this isn't necessarily the way that it's being reported as, in light of the Capitol, as though it were a response to the Capitol Hill riot that these Republicans were leaving. That's not, at the very least, it can't be proven. Now, a lot of states actually don't record some of their party-to-party swaps. And when they do, most of the states in the union actually record on a weekly or monthly basis. So we were told directly, the State Secretary of State's office does not explicitly track party changes for reporting purposes here in Arizona. Quote, we can audit the data for value changes. in this case, we look at when a change to the party value was made, the old and the new values for that field. But that's, quote, not exactly precise because, someone could file to change party in December. And if, the government is operating slowly, which it often does, those are going to come in and get recorded after the Capitol Hill incursion, and it's going to look like a bunch of those folks left in response. It's not helped by the fact that the establishment media then came out and painted a ton of these stories as they would go out and only interview establishment Republicans who were leaving because they didn't like Trump.
Yeah, establishment media hopes that all of these people have left for that reason.
Absolutely. And so we're seeing that, the media is being dishonest about this. The government can't track this in quite the way that it sounds like it's being reported. And some of the experts that we spoke to essentially got at the idea that there is quite a bit going on the Republican side when it comes to ideological infighting. We don't know if it is more of the Trump folks leaving, if it's more of the establishment folks leaving. It could be a bit of both. But really, those numbers actually aren't all that substantial when it really comes down to it. Like you said, George, I mean, some of these swing states, they are decided by, in that, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands range of votes. But at the end of the day, I mean, Tim Wigginton at North Carolina GOP told us relatively small voter registration changes in the pool of 7 million registered voters in North Carolina do not particularly concern us. We are confident that as voters compare the Republican America First agenda to Biden's America Last policies, that essentially they're going to see that the Republicans are going to win out. So what I want to get at with you guys is essentially, and some of the more progressive university experts that have been spoken to by the media have actually said that they would agree with Wigginton. I kind of want to ask both of you, and both questions here is the cause. Who is leaving the GOP? Is it more of the Trump folks or is it more of the establishment folks? What do we think?
So I think there's probably a combination of both. But I personally would suspect it's more the Trump folks. There's, there has been all this talk. Trump actually quashed it to some degree, maybe a week, 10 days ago, about a third party, the Patriot Party. Some folks have called it. There are certainly a lot of Trump voters who have been disappointed, shall we say, with the establishment Republican response to what they see as widespread election fraud, or just in general the attacks from the left, from the media, from the Democratic Party on Donald Trump, and the sort of milquetoast response that the Republicans gave them. So I could see a lot of folks who maybe 5 years ago weren't registered to vote at all, came in registered to vote as Republicans in support of Donald Trump because they wanted to vote for Donald Trump, and now are saying, well, Trump represented me, the Republicans don't, so I'm out of here. I also suspect there's, you quoted a number from Pennsylvania. I could see a certain number of people, not huge, but a certain number of people who are blue-collar workers, maybe union people, who were with Trump, supported Trump because of many of his policies, but don't find Joe Biden distasteful. They buy the whole sort of blue-collar Joe grift that his campaign has been selling for the past year. And so they're like, well, okay, Trump isn't in office anymore, but, I can live with this guy. And so I could see some of those folks leaving the Republican Party, going to the Democratic Party. The other thing that I could see happening there is would be the reverse of Operation Chaos. If you guys remember in 2008 maybe, when I think it was 2008. So you guys won't remember because you were both like 9 years old.
Before my time.
Yeah.
I was 20.
Hillary Clinton.
I was 10.
Hillary Clinton and Barack Obama were in the primary, and Rush Limbaugh was encouraging Republicans to go out and vote for Hillary Clinton in primaries, and he called it Operation Chaos.
I do remember this. Family members.
And I don't know what happened in 2020, but it certainly wouldn't. It's not beyond the pale that some Democratic operatives registered as Republicans to just sow chaos into the Republican system. And some of those, now that this situation's over, are like, okay, I'm done playing that game. We're going to go back to the Republicans. I doubt that would be a huge number of people, but I'll bet it's not zero. Yeah. So, I suspect that there are probably a number of things contributing to this.
Yeah, and actually, one of the things that I'm going to posit, I don't know how, obviously I don't have any data to back this up, but just kind of a gut feeling based on a lot of anecdotal evidence I've heard. One thing about the Trump era, the last 4 years, is that government became so public, so publicized, and I wonder if there are some Republicans and Democrats also lost some voter rolls. I wonder if people just got sick of it all. Like they got sick of the partisanship. They just didn't want to deal with it. They didn't want to have to worry about identifying as Republican or Democrat and just plan on voting on policy or just kind of voting their gut from here on out, as opposed to I'm a Republican, I'm a Democrat. I feel like that, I have no idea how much of a role that played, but I feel like that has to have played some role of people just general disenfranchisement with government as a whole.
Just washing their hands of the whole thing.
Yeah, just I don't want to have to pick a side here. I don't care. I'll pick whatever president I think, or vote for whatever president comes with the best ideas to the table. Which, ultimately, I think that's a good thing if you're voting based on policy. Yeah. But yeah, I think that's definitely at least a small part of it.
And I think kind of syncing those two things together, I think that we've very much forgotten in this kind of hyper-partisan, hyper-covered political climate that there are those voters who vote based on figure. They will vote for an individual. They don't vote for the party.
Yep.
A lot of us do go out and pull the trigger based on the party, but there are people who are not bitter partisans out there that are doing it that way. And I think that, being sick of the way things are going and seeing maybe, George, you brought this up. A lot of people came to the party for Trump. Politico, we cite a Politico report in this report that's coming out later this afternoon. Politico reported it in September of last year that, thousands of people joined the Republican Party in Pennsylvania for Trump.
Right.
He brought out those blue-collar workers that the Republicans don't normally see.
Yep.
So you're absolutely right. There are so many factors playing into this. So what I want to ask as well then, with all these things going around and all these moving parts, and we're still far out from, 2 years away for a midterm and 4 years away for a presidential election. What's the impact? Like, do those small numbers in the swing states, are they going to be kind of something that actually, prevents the Republicans from winning going forward? Or is this going to be something where, normally it's a referendum on the people in office?
Right.
So what are we going to see? Is this departure, this exodus, really going to have the impact that we're thinking?
I don't think it's going to have a huge impact because we're still so far out. And I mostly say that as someone who just doesn't believe in Biden. I think he will mess up enough where a lot of people, we've already seen it, honestly. Yeah. We've talked several times on this show about Biden's fairly disastrous first 2 weeks in office.
Yeah. Barack Obama himself said, never underestimate Joe's ability to blank things up.
Yes, he did.
So we have a couple of years to watch him blank things up.
Yes. Several years. Look forward
and
who knows? Yeah. I also don't think the conspiracy theorist in me still sort of believes that Biden's presidency served as a vessel for Harris to eventually be president. Like if she is the president for 2 years out of the next four, wouldn't surprise me one bit. And I genuinely don't think, another thing we've discussed is that America largely center right. I don't think the country is going to be ready for Harris or a lot of her far left agenda. And I think people will, I will add this caveat. I don't know if they will re-register as Democrat. But I think the way they vote will essentially suggest that. So, yeah, ultimately, I'm not sure it'll make much of a difference.
Yeah, Joe Biden won in large part by pretending not to be a far-left Democrat, and Harris will not have that option. To answer your specific question, and AJ, I don't think there's a big impact, at least in 2 years, largely because turnout in non-presidential election years is so low anyway that the percentage of these folks who turn out, is going to be marginal, I think. So I don't see that being a big impact 2 years from now. 4 years from now, somewhat to Brian's point, so much can happen between now and then. We don't even know who the candidates might be. We assume Harris is going to be one. Biden certainly seemed to indicate he was going to be a one-term president, if that. And then I think it depends on who the Republicans put up, as it always does. So hard to tell, I think, who that's going to be. What we do know today is that Joe Biden is the president. We have him, at least for now. And we'll see, to another Brian's point, we'll see how long that lasts. If that's a 2-year plan, a 4-year plan, if he's gone next Tuesday, we'll find out. Joe Biden's Secretary of Defense may play a role in how some of these people view this administration. Lloyd Austin, former general and now Secretary of Defense, this week went on Twitter. I'm sorry, it's hard for me to even say this with a straight face. He went on Twitter and announced a 60-day service-wide stand-down. I think we may have this tweet to address extremism within the U.S. military. There we go. Today I met with senior leaders to discuss. Actually, I take it back. He wrote it in English. I'm trying to read it in some other language. Today I met with senior did it again. Today, I hear the production crew is laughing. This is going to be a blooper reel that is going to be emailed to me later in the day. That's my prediction. Today, I met with senior leaders to discuss extremism in the military. As a first step, I'm ordering a stand down to occur over the next 60 days, so each service, each command, and each unit can have a deeper conversation about this issue. It comes down to leadership, everyone's. I don't have any idea what any of that means. The way he's ordering a stand down to occur over the next 60 days. Does that mean at some point in the next 60 days a stand down will occur? Does it mean that it's a stand down of a 60-day duration? Does it mean different units will stand down at different points? I don't have any clue. Now, I'd like to think that that's purposeful, because we don't really want to telegraph to our country's enemies, of which there are many, when we're going to be standing down for the important work of rooting out extremism. I'm sorry, he doesn't even say rooting out. He says address. We're going to address extremism.
The highly scientific term of addressing.
Well, address literally means speak to.
We're going to talk about
We're going to talk to extremism in the U.S. military for 60 days. That is so helpful. Luckily, we have Pentagon spokesman John Kirby to elucidate.
Oh,
he said this: "We don't know how we're going to go after this." The 6th of January was a wake-up call for this specific problem, he claimed. "It's not as if it hasn't been studied and reviewed in the past." Here's my favorite part. "The problem is that it's still a problem." I got nothing. The problem is it's a problem. What?
Empty platitudes.
Did you go to school? Do you have a communications degree, Mr. Kirby, that allows
probably
you to say?
Yes.
Yeah, he probably does. This is such political speak. Here are some words that sound kind of good, except they don't really. They mean nothing, maybe less than nothing. But we want you to know, in the U.S. military, that we're aware that extremism exists. Breitbart listed a few examples of the extremism that they may be looking at. Two of my favorites: the OK hand gesture. This makes you a white supremacist. This is a symbol of white supremacy somehow. That is ridiculous. Just for the record, I'm not a white supremacist, but I'm going to do this extra now just to tick people off. I hope I can trigger someone with it. And even images, according to Breitbart, of Pepe the cartoon frog. The U.S. military is taking a 60-day stand down to talk about a cartoon frog. I'm tempted to get up and leave the studio. It is so ridiculous. It is so ridiculous that I got nothing except I could rant. I do have something. I have rants. I could rant all day. I'm not going to do it.
I was really hoping that you were going to say Pepe Le Pew. Really
that would only be marginally more stupid. At least Pepe Le Pew is, French and therefore a potential threat to our national security.
Exactly.
He also can't tell the difference between cats and skunks, which makes him dangerous in all sorts of other ways. Given that we haven't been made aware of a single instance of extremism in the U.S. military affecting war readiness. Now, I'd be the first to say military is a big place. There are a lot of people in it. I'm sure there are some nutballs in there, no question. I was in the military myself. I encountered a couple of instances, I wouldn't call them extremism, but a couple of instances of what I certainly would describe as racism when I was in. No reason for me to believe that that's particularly changed in the decades since. But we are not aware, have not been made aware of an instance of this extremism, cartoon frog loving something that's affecting U.S. war readiness, which is what the military is for. So given that hasn't existed in even the smallest degree that we're aware of, what would you guys say is the purpose, the actual purpose of a stand-down order like this?
To me, I think it's pretty simple, and we've seen it in several avenues. After the events really built up through the Trump administration, and then kind of the powder keg blew on January 6th, the left was handed the ultimate boogeyman, extremism, whatever it may mean.
Domestic terrorism.
Yeah, domestic terrorism. I guess domestic terrorism has an actual definition. I'm not sure it's applied correctly by the left.
None of this.
Yeah.
Cartoon frogs do not fall into the category of domestic terrorism that I'm aware of.
Cartoon skunks might.
Maybe. That's again, they're French, so that's a whole different standard.
Can't trust them.
No.
But yeah, so I think extremism has become this catch-all boogeyman for the left. They are going to proliferate that idea at every possible level. The news stations are going to cover it. Biden and Harris will certainly talk about it. The military is concerned about that's how big of a problem it is. And I'm obviously saying this facetiously, but it's not a problem, I don't think. But yeah, the left.
If it is, it hasn't been described to us.
Exactly.
If there's something that actually has some practical effect, I'm all ears. And we should address that, whatever that means. But yeah, if there is an actual concern. Nobody's told me what that is.
And I think that's intentional. Once you define it.
I think it has to be intentional.
Yeah. Once you define it, it loses.
It's a smaller net.
Yeah, it's a smaller net. It loses the boogeyman factor. Keep it as broad and omnipotent as possible and just run with it. Run with the fear-mongering. Run with all of that. I think that's why. That's the purpose of it.
Okay.
Yeah, it's an opportunity essentially to create an itch and then for the left to insert its own calamine lotion, which it's progressivism and it's demonization of the right.
Did you just come up with that analogy here?
I did indeed.
The itch calamine lotion thing.
Indeed.
Nice, that's nice thinking on your toes, AJ.
What
nice
can
work.
I say?
Okay.
What can I say?
That's why you're the Cracker Jack reporter.
I taught him well.
Yes, you did.
These folks, and it makes me mad on a level that you can't even imagine, because last week we spoke about the Republicans not fighting hard enough against some of Joe Biden's cabinet level appointments. And we talked about, some of these people are not radical progressives. And it seems like we just never managed to not get tricked by the feigned moderacy, Barack Obama, Lloyd Austin. These folks are frauds. And now we're using it. We're having an excuse, essentially. Andrew Breitbart himself said this before his death. That they've been looking for an excuse to make us into Timothy McVeigh's for as long as Timothy McVeigh has been in the public consciousness, and this is a great excuse. They have a great excuse.
So you mentioned Barack Obama. His administration was known for using the military to advance their leftist cultural agenda. So best known example may have been the repeal of the Clinton era Don't Ask, Don't Tell policy in 2011. That had been in place for not 2 decades, but I think close. I want to say 17, 18 years, when that was legislatively changed and signed into law by Barack Obama. And then in 2016, sort of in the waning days, in the summer of 2016, if I recall correctly, the waning days of the Obama administration, they repealed a 56-year-old rule banning transgendered people from serving in the military. There is no military reason to do that. Zero. There is nothing that makes our war readiness better by the inclusion of a tiny percentage of people who were excluded before. Zero. Nothing. So is Biden going to use the military in the same way that Obama did, as a social experiment rather than an instrument of national defense and security? What do you think, Andrew?
No doubt. I mean, if there's anything that, when I speak to Michael in the newsroom that like he just makes me constantly aware of, kind of pointing out and pulling these great threads out of the current news, it's that the left thinks everything is a social experiment. I mean, there is nothing that they can't use to talk about, systems of oppression and institutions of evil and all these weird, Chomsky-esque terms, just absolute rabid nonsense. I think they're absolutely going to. I don't see any reason why they wouldn't. I mean, we've already seen that they've lifted Trump's. You said this, I think. We've already seen them lifting the transgender inclusion that was put in place by the last administration when they put it back. I mean, there's no question in my mind that they don't care. They don't care if we're war ready. They don't see us as ever needing to be war ready, or at the very least, even to have the appearance of war readiness, because people like China aren't our enemies. They are oppositional collaborators. They're to be, difficult partners that we make under the Biden administration. It's nonsense. It is absolute idealist nonsense.
They might have to change their mind about China. I saw a piece today that the Chinese government is implementing education to make Chinese men more manly because they have been, according to the
Why'd
government.
You look at me when you said that?
The production crew is laughing again.
I'm not
Why
Chinese.
do you think I looked at... I didn't...
I'm not
did
Chinese.
I say you were Chinese?
Q, I'll make a man of you from Mulan.
Yeah. But apparently the Chinese government is... And they're blaming actually like pop artists. They're saying you guys are... The influence that you have on our culture is feminizing Chinese men, so we're instituting education.
Why do you keep looking at me?
Because you're the only pop artist in the room.
Fair enough. To go back to your question real quick, George.
I do not get paid enough for this gig.
At least you get paid. So going back to your question, George, I don't think the question is whether Biden will use the military in the way Obama did as a social experiment. I think it's whether that'll be it, honestly. I think it's going to be so...
Whether there's anything else he does with the military.
Or I think the much shorter answer is going to be, like, what won't Biden try to use as a social experiment? Like, literally, though, like, that's...
Yeah.
I mean, we've already seen it with police. We've seen it with education. We've seen it with military. It's nonstop from the left. Everything is a tool for them to further their agenda, and they have probably the biggest weapon of all, the media. Like that, it proliferates. It makes it so much worse.
His whole administration is a social experiment. It's, can a man with dementia run the country?
No, you make a really good point, Brian. I mean, even in just his executive orders, he's already seeking to extend the tendrils of the federal government into all aspects of American life, including sports.
Sports, one of my favorite
See
pastimes.
that transition there? Was that? Yeah, that was smooth, wasn't that? Yeah, that was smooth.
Oh my gosh. Anyways, guys, so I want to talk about today. So we are 2 days removed from Super Bowl 55, featuring the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and Kansas City Chiefs.
Go Tampa.
Sure. It should be noted.
Unquestionably.
It should be noted that all three of us on the panel today are Patriots fans. So you're getting the most smartest and cutting edge football.
Smartest.
Yes.
No question about that. I actually graduated from Foxborough High School. I don't know if I told you guys that, but yeah, I lived 3 miles from where they played when I grew up, and they were really bad then. So
I'm old enough to remember that.
Terrible team.
But so obviously we don't really want to talk about the ins and out of the game itself. But one trend that I generally like to keep an eye on, just out of curiosity, and also some larger societal implications, is Super Bowl ratings. They've been on a relative steady decline since I believe it peaked in the 2015 Super Bowl between the New England Patriots and the Seattle Seahawks, which, by the way, the Patriots won.
I recall that game. Do you remember that
I recall that game as well.
When you win
Great
so
game.
many championships, you
It's
start
hard
to
to
lose
keep
track.
you do.
Yeah,
Pull the
you start
back
to lose
memories.
track.
They all seem to blur.
Yep.
But yeah. I do remember that one.
That game had 114 million viewers, which is a staggering amount. The following year, it was Denver versus Carolina. That number dipped ever so slightly to 111. The year after that, it was New England versus Atlanta, which
I remember
that.
too.
Patriots also won.
Yeah, that was
I don't know if you guys remember that.
That was the last few minutes of that game were pretty interesting. Yeah.
And that one had 111 million. Now that I want to note that because the 2017 Super Bowl was the last, or that was sort of the full year of anthem protests. That was when Kaepernick in the 2016 preseason started kneeling for the anthem, and that really put football, the NFL, in a very politicized spotlight.
Right. Trump made a lot of statements about that.
Yes, he
during
did.
his campaign and early on in his presidency.
Yes, he did. So that game, New England the Patriots versus Falcons, 111 million viewers. Again, still really up there. The following year, so after I think Trump's really had a chance to hammer that point home about an anthem protest, after a lot of fans have kind of digested the national anthem protests, that number actually dropped to 103 million. So that's a bit of, again,
It's a good sized drop.
yeah, 8 million viewers. That's, probably a little less than 10%, but still, that's a lot of people who just stopped watching the Super Bowl. That was the Patriots-Eagles Super Bowl. I can't remember what happened in that game. I don't remember.
Yeah, I'm not sure I watched that one. Yeah.
And then the following year, we had Rams-Patriots, which I do remember.
Another great one.
Yeah.
That was a good game. Yeah, I remember that one well.
Unfortunately, not as many people watch that. That's the first Super Bowl in 10 years, give or take. Yeah, 10 years that had less than 100 million viewers.
A lot of people missed out because that was a good game.
It was a great
That was a really good game to watch.
And then the following year, it went back up to 100 million. So point being, the NFL, since anthem protests have started, have lost about 14 million average viewers in the Super Bowl. And we know that that's... Obviously, there are a lot of casual fans who watch Super Bowl who don't normally watch, week in, week out NFL action. But it did make me think, do you guys think that number will ever go back up? Do you think, because I know a lot of Americans were, disgusted, upset with the anthem protest, and I understand that. I personally have always been able to kind of compartmentalize my politics and my entertainment, keep those separate. So it I'll be honest, didn't bother me nearly as much. But yeah, do you think the NFL will ever kind of reach the lofty highs of that 2015 Super Bowl?
I don't think that we can discount the idea that the causation might actually not be politics. It might be that people are just sick of seeing the greatest athlete of all time, Tom Brady, just win the Super Bowl over and over again.
That's true.
So maybe when his career is over, people will come back. But more seriously, I don't actually
get any more serious than that.
I don't know if it's possible for some of these institutions to come back, at least unless they kind of come out and outright say, like, listen, there are important things going on in the world right now, but we are here to be entertainment. We are here to be an escape. We are here to bring people together and to be that unity that, Joe Biden talked about unity. That's what those institutions, Hollywood and sporting events, were supposed to be. It was supposed to be a way for America to come together and to love something together. And I think until they actually come out and say we're done with all of that, it's important, but we are not part of it, that it's not going to happen.
Which I don't think they're going to do. No. I think someday they get back to the 115 million number because the population of the U.S. grows.
Yeah, that's fair. Just raw numbers, yeah.
So, it's not really apples to apples, but I don't think, I think there is this thing in America where people feel like if they have a voice in any aspect of the country, they have to use that to push their agenda. Yes. Now, I have to be a little careful in saying that because that's what I do for a living.
Yeah.
But the the point is that it's what I do for a living. I'm not a great tennis star who is using my spotlight to, advance whatever. It started, I think, in a lot of good causes where you had people who said, well, I want to use my newfound fame to promote, I don't know, whatever, this charity or my work to end homelessness or whatever. And I don't have any problem with any of that because I don't think there's any issue like that. I don't think, I'll pick on Peyton Manning. I don't think he does a commercial on ending homelessness and there are people like, shut up, man, you'd play football.
Yeah.
I mean, that, it's homelessness. We're all kind of against it. Yeah. It's not in any way divisive. Politics by its nature is divisive. It doesn't have to be as uncivil as it's become, but it is by its nature divisive. You have different sides of an issue. There are no two sides on the homelessness issue. No. We're all against homelessness. We all are against cancer. We all want children to have good education. Those, they were these universal things. And if football players, movie stars, whoever want to get up and say, let's end hunger in North America, great. I don't think there's anybody in the stands going, shut up, man, I'm in favor of hunger. I mean, nobody's doing that. But if they want to stand up and say, America is a racist country.
Yeah. Preaching to the wrong choir.
Yeah, especially in the NFL, you're preaching to the wrong choir. So unfortunately, I just don't think that's going to happen. I don't think that change is going to happen. I think there's been this taste of self-importance that some of these guys get, and I don't think that's going away. With one caveat, I think Roger Goodell has done a terrible job on this issue. Yeah. Terrible for the NFL, for the fans, for the players. We get a new commissioner in there. Maybe some rules get sent down and some behavior has to change on that basis. But I think I don't see that happening. No. And but I see that as the only real way that any major change would occur.
Yeah, I mean, it is worth noting that of the 30 most watched television broadcasts of all time, 29 of them are Super Bowl games. Yeah. Like a diminished NFL still towers over the competition.
Anything else. Yeah.
Fun fact,
and that won't change because the way viewership has changed of television, the way we consume that entertainment, right? Netflix, streaming services in general, whatever. Super Bowl shows up in one place, right? Yep. And you can watch it there, and that's it. And so it has that advantage. Nobody else. Do you count Hulu ratings on the TV shows that are also live broadcast on network? No. How do you compare those two things? So I think Super Bowl remains in the top 30 for essentially forever.
The one show that cracks that top 30 that is not the Super Bowl is the series finale of MASH, which I will let the audience decide. Only one of us on this panel was alive for that series finale of MASH. I'll let you guys decide who it was. Last question, real quick.
A TV series set in Korea, by the way. I don't know if you were aware of that, AJ.
I had no idea.
Yeah, it was set in Korea. It was really about the Vietnam War, but it was set during the Korean War.
So I guess the last thing I want to hit on, guys, kind of
Korea. Did I mention that, Brian? It was set in Korea.
All right, you're allowed to look at me for that one.
See what that has to do with being a pop star, but okay.
So, MASH, Super Bowl, what have you. I mean, even MASH had some political undertones to it. It was,
yes.
So it's
Definitely.
always been in the media, but it's been feeling more and more polarizing recently. Do you think we're going to see that trend, not just the Super Bowl, not just sports, just all of, kind of mainstream entertainment? Do you guys think that's going to get better or worse as we go on? And, just sort of why?
I think worse. I think that I actually am of the mind that you could probably keep politics in all forms of media, and it would be totally fine if it was fair. I know that there's going to be some folks probably in the audience who don't love this. I love South Park. South Park holds no boundaries on who it makes fun of, the left, the right. I never feel more partisan coming out of South Park. I feel more united because everyone gets laughed at a little bit.
That's how Saturday Night Live used to be.
Yeah.
All of those old pieces of comedy were like that. At the very least, if they were political, they were equal opportunity offenders. And I think so. If we can maybe go back to kind of the roots of comedy where there is some of that equal opportunity offense, maybe we will get a less polarized politics and culture, but I don't see that happening either, honestly.
Yeah, I totally agree. The if that happens, then I could see that reversing. But that if is so big.
Yeah.
I just can't. I mean, you have essentially monolithic ownership of news media, entertainment, and social media in this country. And monolithic, I mean simply these are all folks that are on the left, and for the most part on the far left. And they don't, as I've said before, you don't have to be a conspiracy theorist to believe that all these company presidents are going to wake up on the same day and think the same thing and do similar things, because they all think the same. They all have the same worldview. They don't have to get on the phone and say, hey, I'm going to mess with Trump today. What are you going to do? They all wake up going, I think I'll mess with Trump today. And, they don't have to talk to each other. So you don't have to be a conspiracy theorist, and I'm not much of a conspiracy theorist anyway, to believe that there is this sort of lockstep in the major entertainment centers of the country, and that lockstep is definitely marching to the left.
Okay.
So, with that happy note, despite all of that, I do plan to watch the game, and my wife has already bought the ingredients for some of my favorite snacks, so I will come in Monday morning several pounds heavier.
Can I join you?
You live like across the street from me, basically.
My point exactly.
You are welcome anytime.
I live across town, but I'll walk.
Yeah, come on. Yeah, well, you're welcome to come. You are all welcome to come. You may as well come as well. We'll watch the game probably in my backyard, and it's going to be a good one. Before we leave, predictions. Andrew.
Obviously the Buccaneers. Tom Brady.
If I were a gambling man, which I am vehemently not, just in case my parents are watching this, go Bucks.
Yeah. Yeah, my heart is with the Bucks. Mahomes looks good. And my daughter dates the son of one of their coaches, so
Mahomes might be your son-in-law one day?
No, not I don't think you know how this works. So I definitely go Bucks. Go Brady is really what I mean by that. Go Gronk. It's just a joy to see them play, even if their careers are nearing their end.
Just the narrative of that, the best versus the next when it comes to quarterbacks.
It's going to be a go Bucks weekend at my house. I won't be too upset or too surprised to see that other team, whoever they are, win. I have to throw that in mostly for my daughter. And then we'll be back Monday, and me with a couple extra pounds, probably, as I said. The camera already adds some, so we'll be adding even extra for next week's episodes of WJ Live, powered by the Western Journal. We will be here Monday through Friday next week. We'll have, I'm sure, impeachment trial stuff to talk about. There's all kinds of stuff happening next week. We're going to do our very best to keep you informed of what's going on, not with the spin that you're going to get from the mainstream media, but we're going to look at those reports. We're going to discern the truth from that, and we're going to bring that to you at 5 p.m. Eastern, 2 p.m. Pacific, Monday through Friday, right here on WJ Live, powered by the Western Journal. Find us on youtube.com/WJ Live. Please subscribe there. Click that bell so you get notified when new episodes air. You can also find us wherever you listen to audio podcasts, Spotify, Apple, etc. And then we encourage you also to go to westernjournal.com/newsletters. Well, westernjournal.com/newsletters. You'll find a few there you can sign up for, but one of the ones you're not going to want to miss is the WJ Live newsletter. We will email you a link every time a new episode comes up, so you will never miss one. And we're going to do everything we can to keep you informed with the truth. That's our mission. It's our vision. It's our value here at WJ Live, powered by the Western Journal. So We'll see you next week with important news of impeachment and all sorts of other Biden administration and Democrat-controlled Congress shenanigans.
The rigmarole.
We'll tell you what's going on, so you can see through the mainstream media spin next week. We're looking forward to that. See you then. In the meantime, stay safe. Have a great weekend, everybody.
I mean, if you learned anything from the Obama years and the way that Trump kind of rose on that, I'm an outsider, I am with America, with mainstream America, with middle America, against celebrity and against media and against the people in power, that message resonated because people were sick of the slobbering love affair that was had with Barack Obama. And I think they're going to get sick of it far more quickly when it comes to Biden. Half of America is already sick of it.